Hello, welcome back everyone. Mr. Minority here, coming back to you with the last small set that I will review, Wave 8 Defenders of Kinsland. Not to spoil anything, but yeah, the three sets, the Dawn of Darkness, Defenders of Kinsland, the Fields of Valor, I said out of order, but those three, really like those sets. So here we go with a strong set, and you know, it's gonna be a little bias here, maybe a lot of bias, because I really like me some elves. You know, having written my own written whatever it was, novel or whatever you want to call it, crap about it. You know, it never got published, whatever. So there may be a lot of bias here, but hey, isn't that what you're here for? The bias, the bias. It's just my list. So here we go. Let's get started. So the I think 10th Regiment of Foot. I'm going to put them in the B tier. These guys are actually, if I were doing an exclusively meta tier ranking, it would be way up there, probably S. Pretty similar to the 4th Massachusetts line. A little bit of variation here and there, but again, that's kind of, I know I've said this before multiple times, but I like this a lot about Heroscape, is that you have similarities enough to have, okay, these guys are from similar time periods, so they function similarly in terms of their role, but just enough differences to kind of show, okay, interesting differences, for lack of a better term. I can't get my vocabulary more varied here. I do kind of find it interesting that they're for Enyar, but they're disciplined and all that good stuff, I guess. In terms of their aesthetic, pretty decent. Nothing really too out of the ordinary. They're pretty similar to the Massachusetts line, of course. If they're representing, the red coats, that's a. I don't keep up with what's a politically correct term or not. Sorry if that's not a correct term. They're wearing a red coat, but yeah. And so, pretty good, pretty damn good in terms of, everything else, besides the meta, how meta they are in actual typical 400, however many point games you do. They're still pretty decent. They'll carry their weight, and they're an interesting squad to pull off. Okay, here we got, I believe this is Arkmer. Let me try to refresh myself on the names and make sure I'm not, absolutely butchering all of them. Sometimes it's been years since I've played with a particular figure. Yes, this is Arkmer. I'm going to put him in the A tier. Again, it's just elves. I like me some elves, and I like his garb as well. You got the, the staff, and then the cloak. I don't know about the bright yellow hue. That might be a little bit off-putting, but that's okay. We're really nitpicky. We're really nitpicking. Pretty good, solid, stats and abilities when coupled with other elves. If he's by himself, he's pretty, he's fairly ass. And someone like a Meebergso would be far more of a, meta choice. But, I don't think the elf armies are too meta in terms of top cuts. But it's fun to play with them, and if you get a bunch of elves, with him in particular, surrounded by several of the Arubian, or if I'm pronouncing that correctly, archers, you can really stack up some defense on him, and then of course he has pretty high attack. So he's one of those, in my experience, when again when I did play Heroscape, it would be these massive, everyone against each other battles. Well, two sides basically, but all army cards that we had at the time, and he would always do very well. He just, he has the attack. He doesn't really have the range. 5 range is a slightly newer for the newer sets, newer as in 15 years ago. Newer, lower range. Before 5 range came out, 6 range was pretty common for a low range, but 5 is a pretty low range for a range figure. So he has to get relatively close for a range figure in order to attack, but he still has range, and he has 4 attack. And that's pretty heavy for a ranged figure. Obviously, again, his defense and life are leaving a lot to be desired. It makes him very, very squishy. But with his defense You could have, up to however many spaces you can be adjacent, like 7 more defense or something, 6 more defense. So he can have massive defense. I don't know if you want to group them all together like that, depending on, who you're going against, but, theoretically speaking, you can get some pretty high defense. Chargers, I'm going to put him up here. I really like Chargers as well. I think I know all these elves' names by heart. I don't need to look at anything. If I do make a mistake, you'll let me know, of course. And obviously the pronunciation. Chargers is pretty good. He's kind of similar to Arkmer in the sense that, he pulls his weight. I don't think he pulls his weight quite as well in a large-scale battle based on how many more points he's worth. I think he should be worth more. But I still think he's pretty good. He's pretty decent for his points worth, because especially for his life, he has some pretty decent life. He does sacrifice some defense, which is, disappointing. But then when you combo him with other elves, with his special ability, and that's what you're going to see in this set. There's a lot of elf combinations. This set is elf heavy. We had a few smattering of elves here and there, but this set really knocked it out of the park when it comes to elf heroes. The garb, I do like his garb overall a little better. I like, if you were calling me in past videos saying about like coverings and whatever, which is maybe a little controversial because it's like, oh, Hakuto, it's an elf. I really like, I like his garb a little bit better than him, but I don't know. I like them both a lot, so I'll keep them, kind of in this particular area. But pretty good. In Maroon, I'm actually not as much of a fan of his design as these two. I think maybe his face is a little odd looking. But in Maroon, still an elf, starring, continuing strong. The thing that I would say pushes him over from a B kind of level design to an A level design is just his ability, right? With his, staff of summoning. Before we had Sayland, who could summon. And then you have a few guys like Theracus and, I was about to say Braxis, Brunek, which can carry. But with Immaroon, you've got, of course, the elves, helping to potentially bring more to him. And you can really, depending on the size of the battlefield, get some rapid reinforcements. Is that a Star Wars Armada reference? Anyway, and again, it really just depends on the size of the board and what the composition of the board is, right? You have a small flat board, summoning's okay, better than nothing. But you have a huge, multi-level tier, castles all over the place, major high advantage all over the place, mountains rolling, summoning just becomes all the more, admirable or enviable. It just depends. In terms of meta and the meta, I think elves overall aren't that great. And if I had to, maybe kind of extrapolate a little bit here, better points spent elsewhere, right? He doesn't really add anything for attacking or defending. He's just for movement placing, and hopefully you can get to a good place where you need to be or already be in position. And if you aren't, then you might have to pair him with a Theracus to get him in the good position, because he's not going to be getting anywhere fast with his 5 movement and no flying. And then do that, sword trade. So anyway, now we go with the Grok Rise. I'm going to put them in the strong B tier. Strong B tier, please. Thank you very much. So, their designs are decent. It's creative. I like them riding something. Now, their actual figure, unlike the knights who are mounted, their flails or whatever it is, are not very extremely brittle, so that's kind of nice. They are a little flexible, and if you apply enough force, either accidentally or purposefully, they will break. But they're a lot more generous when it comes to storage and all that stuff, as opposed to the sagging lances of the mounted knights. Anyway, and in terms of the design, The Maros themselves are kind of lazy. They just look like regular Maro, so I would give negative points there. But then the Groks, okay, or whatever they are, the species of whatever they're riding, not super creative, but different. We haven't seen it before, so it gets a pretty decent pass. Are they meta? Not really. They're just worth way too much. They're worth 130 points. They are, I think, like second most, tied for second most, or something along those lines. Their bonding though is pretty good. Their bonding is pretty good. You can't go wrong with that. I don't think anyone else has Mara Warlord bonding directly. You have other kinds of bonding to get Mara Warlords to bond with, such as you could do like Roman Legionnaires with their Warlord bonding, or you could do Ornak with his anyone who follows Ugar, because there's no Mara who follow anyone else besides Ugar. But anyway, they're, I think, better options. But you do have that option, and it's a pretty good one, pretty good ability. And then you have the Mark of the Rider, or Mark of the Warlord. I don't know. The thing about them is, like, if you have bonding, you want to stay back, right? Generally speaking, because then you can go with someone else, or you can maybe, if you want to be in the fray, maybe have one or two in the fray. So the other ability, you have to be in the fray, and it will hurt. It will hurt. +2 attack, but it's just. They're so, 1 life, 3 defense. They're gonna fall. They're gonna fall so quickly, and they're larger as well. So there's more opportunities for engagement, more opportunities for line of sight, and then they can't be rebirthed. So not very meta, I would say. And in a large scale battle, which is what I've done, typically they don't pull their weight. They don't do much at all. On the opposite end of the spectrum. Jordan. Okay, I'm gonna put Jordan up here. I like her a lot. I think her face maybe has kind of nebulous features, so it looks kind of odd. She's on the front of the package though, so that's if your imagination is a little murky, it gives a little bit of a prop. Jordan, as opposed to the Grok Riders, in large battles. I don't know about you guys, and I know that I think the rules say differently. You have to put the figure on the card when they die. With us, what we like to do is whenever a figure was killed or destroyed, it would be like a bounty hunter or whatever. You would take the figure that was destroyed and put it on the card of the figure that destroyed it. So basically, like, you could see how well you did, like, right off the bat. Her card. There's a few other army cards like this, but her card is almost always covered. Like, you could not see who is this army card I'm going with now, because she'd just always be covered, with so many bodies, Couple her with some elves in her, flame attack. Let me see what exactly it's called. Now that I don't know what that's called. Rain of Flame special attack. Yeah, I always think it's like a fireball or something, because she's only holding one. But anyway. And man, so long as she has, I think, at least 2 elves and a lot clear on his side, she just rains down the pain. It's kind of like, if I remember correctly, it's basically Deathwalker 9000's ability, right? But then have 1 more attack. It's very good, And obviously, she herself is pretty squishy. I actually didn't know she had 6 life. I thought she had 5 life. But anyway, that's good. You can really set up a solid, again, if the elves, theoretically, if you have them on high ground, you can really set up a good, strong position. Again, weak to explosive attacks like another Deathwalker or another Jordan. Explosion, ranged attacks. But, hey. Pretty solid if you don't have an answer to that. Now, your name I do not have memorized. It's Kato something. Kato Katsuro. Okay, so you... I struggle with this one a little bit. He is massively overpriced in my opinion. But he does have something unique about him. Ish. He's kind of like a Red Skull in that regard. I really, he is interesting though. He is. I do. Just man, he just doesn't pull his weight. I'll put him here. I really kind of wanted to put him lower because of how lackluster he's been in our games. No, the Hero Samurai Archer has done pretty well. There's actually no Hero Samurai. Now that I think about besides that Archer. He's just massively overpriced. You know, taking a turn with this bonding thing is, pretty good. Now he has a choice bonding, and you do have to have clear line of sight. But the nice thing about it is, it's just clear line of sight. There is no range that you have to do. So you could have a massive board, and so long as he has, binocular 10-mile vision on a clear day, he can, take a turn. But for that amount of points, it's massive, then of course you can also take it with the Shigeru. It is kind of nice that he does have the bulkier stats, in terms of the 4 attack and 4 defense, but it just doesn't make up for how. That's just 200 is just a massive price. Again, if you're doing a 400-point army build, that's half your army right there. And I don't know. I don't think he's that good. I do like though the design. I do like the fact that he's a daimyo. He's not like a straight samurai. Which for those of you not too familiar with it, it's kind of, if I had to do an analogous, it's basically like the knights and their feudal lords, right? The knights were the samurai, and then the feudal lord was like the daimyo. So I like the design. So that is probably 70% of why he's in the A tier for me, but leaves a lot to be desired. I think if he had stronger bonding options, maybe, but yeah. Okay, Moriko, I'm gonna put her down here. I'm not too crazy about her design. It's okay. Anytime someone is holding 2 swords at once, I get a little suspicious, just in terms of what's it called? Actual utility that you get out of that. But I'm not trained. I'm not trained in HEMA or anything, or any type of sword play or anything. So I could be absolutely deadly wrong. It just seems like it's more for flair than actual utility. But anyway, I could be wrong. Other than that, nitpick. She's pretty decent. A little hefty points for the cushiness of the life, but a lot of attack options. She's got this, I think it's a Saber Storm is what it's called, but it's basically like the melee equivalent to Major Q 10's Major Q9's abilities, Major Q9 ability from Ragnar's Vision, and yeah. Pretty decent solid stats though in terms of attacking and defending, so yeah, I'll put her there again. I like the dark ninjas, or the darker hues like the blacks and etc. So the green is kind of interesting, but it's for Ular, so I was like, okay, it kind of fits, but decent overall. Otanashi, a lot of this is also by how useful they are, I kind of feel, and Otanashi just doesn't do anything on a large battle. She's only worth 10 points though, and that's pretty good. That's a pretty decent. If you got 10 points left, especially if you got someone tricky in your army, she's a good choice. And the one thing I did like about Heroscape, towards the end of their life, in terms of the life of the original Heroscape publication, is that they start coming out with lower, cheaper options, which, pre-whatever, there was none of that. So I think the cheapest was like 40, and it was always 40, 40, 40, which is, pretty cheap, but you could go lower. And the Dumbtip Guard actually was one of the lower ones, along with the Swag Rider. So yeah, we started getting these really uber cheap ones, and yeah, not a huge fan of the design. It almost kind of reminds me of a police, or something. I don't know. but even though it has the darker hue, it might be hypocritical. I might go and have it both ways, but I don't know. I just I don't know. I don't know. How can I explain this? But it's okay. It's overall okay. Maybe if she were a lot beefier, kind of like Mariko. I do like the fact that she is for Vidar, but the fact that she's just so poor in terms of how good she is probably makes her lower. But again, good option, especially in terms of the meta. So Sir Dupuis is interesting. I'm gonna put him, surprisingly enough, maybe high B tier. I could maybe put him in the A tier. A kind of similar thing with him not having his helmet on. Is like, okay, he's if you're truly in the midst of battle, you're gonna have better range of sight, but just watch the face. Watch the face, because it looks like based on your pose, you're in the midst of battle. You're charging. So, Sir Dupuis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, take my French with a grain of salt. Let me see if I can kind of get a little bit more details here. He just never, when I have played with him, has really done all that well. He does okay, but his point value is not okay. It's very high. But if I were to choose, between say him and a Sergeant Alexander, obviously it depends on the map, that sort of stuff, what your opponent is bringing. I would choose like a Sergeant Alexander pretty much every time. Just so much more utility and being able to stand up against. He just anytime you have a larger figure, kind of as I mentioned with the Grok Riders. There's a few things that come with that. One is, again, you have more engagements. So, maybe if you have, if you're facing off and there's two armies and they're coming at each other, you may have maybe 3 or so spaces in front of you that are in front of you before they have to start getting around you. But then if you have multiple, bases, there's more opportunities for engagement. And so, you can be swarmed by common squads more easily. And it just, and then you have to disengage, and whatever. Of course, he has tactical disengagement, but as opposed to just completely disengage. So yeah, his Knight's Courage is nice. That's where he gets, I think, a lot of his utility, in terms of most of his points. He obviously has the very high movement, the above average life, above average attack, but then the defense is where he just really falls apart, because he's a knight, right? You would like to think maybe he had 4 defense, but then again, the other mountain knights don't. And if he had 4 defense, I could see this figure, being pretty decent. But as is, anything 3 defense, it just seems like that's kind of like, I won't say a target, a magnet, because if you have lower defenses, it's much more of a magnet. But 3 defense is where I would start feeling comfortable as a common squad attacking consistently. 4 defense is where it starts to be, okay, I might not do damage here. Again, it depends on your common squad, but generally speaking, it's like 4 defense is where you think you might not do damage, so you might attack elsewhere. You might be deterred even before you attack. But to me, for some reason, it could just be the psychology of 3 defense is like, okay, there's a fair chance you're going to roll nothing, so let me attack, or at least 1. Again, 4 defense, the likelihood of you not rolling at least 1 is quite low. So, but I put him there. I think the design is pretty decent. I like the design, to be honest with you, of the other knights better because they have their helmets on. I do like, however, his sword better because although it is kind of flexible, it's not, again, to the extent of the drooping lances, affected by a decade and a half plus of gravity. So, Ugglenish. I'm going to put Ugglenish up here behind Chargeris in front of Immaroon. Would you please? Thank you. Immaroon, I'm not a huge fan of his facial features of the design, but everything else I like a lot. I like his flying horse. I really like his ability to be able to make other elves go. It's pretty darn good if you're going for this. He's worth 150. depending on the army, I would feel much more comfortable, generally speaking, investing 150 with him than, say, someone like Sir Dupuis. And his flying. Again, it depends on the board. But, man, if you have a very vertically happy board, man, flying and range, that's extremely rare. In fact, I think, is he the first one to have it? When I say range, I mean like actual range. I don't mean like a special ability like, you know, a Braxis or a Nilphium. I think he's the first one to have it, and then in the next set, Black Moon Siege, then we have, I'm forgetting his name, the Atlaga. I could be wrong. There might be other range figures that came out before him, but it's certainly, if he wasn't the first, it's very unusual up until this point. I should do my research before I do these videos. Bad. Okay. But yeah, a strong figure, again, in terms of his base stats, nothing special. It's completely average, besides, again, the coupling of the high movement and then the range. But the life, attack, defense is all average. And then the movement, again, is, you know, decent on paper, but, you know, with flying, it makes it really good. So I really like the design of the horse. The flying horse is really nice. If it had been a flying unicorn, that probably would have propped him up even more. Sparkly rainbows, even more. No, but you know, flying horse, that's pretty darn cool. I like that a lot. I like that design. And then if his face, you know, we're probably again, a lot of these elves, I think, as with a lot of the Heroscape figures, like with humans or whatever, lack decent amount of design in the face. I probably would bump them up a few slots in the A tier, but still really solid design overall. Solid figures. These wolves, okay, I'll be honest with you, I didn't get these until maybe about 2 or so years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, so they're a more recent addition. I'm going to put them here. I almost want to put them in the C tier. No, I guess I won't. I'll be nice. I'm feeling nice after an elf high. This design, man, this is a lazy design. They look almost exactly like regular wolves, just a little bit, you know, I guess increased shoulders, you know, red eyes, whatever. Not a fan of this at all, really. Wolves of Badru is what they're called. Okay. In terms of their abilities, they're pretty decent. They're a bit pricey. Again, I don't really have a lot of playing experience with them. I think I've done that once or twice. I think they're Pounce. They have Dark Lord bonding. How many Dark Lords are there? Just Kusumet in the base game. There might be others. I can only think of Kusumet. So they do kind of sort of bond with, you know, the other wolves, like the Anubian wolves, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. You know, those guys who can have a 9 attack. Whoosh. And those are cool because they're werewolves. So these wolves are just, I'm not a fan of their design. They're pretty basic in terms of what they look like. I almost want to put them as a C, but I don't know. They have some pretty unique abilities, which, you know, no one has Dark Lord bonding, and then no one has their Pounce and whatever, and Climb. Were they the first one to had Climb? I think they might have been one of the first, not the first. So this had a few firsts. Were they the first smalls as well? Yeah, I think they were one of the first smalls as well. So, no. We had the Death Reavers, so never mind. But even so, you know, pretty unique in those regards. So, you know, I would put them in the B tier, low B tier, very, very low B tier. But really do want to put them in the C tier, and maybe on another day, you know, if I were just doing it separately, I would put them in the C tier. But again, I'm on an elf high, so, you know, what can I say? So, there you go. We got the Defenders of Kinsland. That will be the last, and that will wrap it up, you know, for the small sets. Again, I only have the Heroes of Black Moon Siege. I don't have the unearthly expensive other sets. I did get the Heroes of Black Moon Siege. Whatever. I actually don't know when I got that. Was that 10 plus years ago. You know, maybe even before it was discontinued. I got it a long time ago, so whatever. It wasn't, you know, super. It's not like I paid an arm and a leg, but like these other sets. Next, I will probably do the large set Orm's Return, so I'll do the large since I don't have a Close Alliance. Speaking of things that are unearthly expensive. But yeah, I'll move into the large sets. And then after that, maybe do some terrain. I didn't even think about the flag bearers. Maybe do some flag bearers. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Defenders of Kinsland, good sets. Obviously, lots and lots of elves. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will catch you in the next